Welcome to another in the series, Sip and Chat, a place where we talk about the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. It's our pleasure this afternoon to be coming into your homes and to be talking about the goodness of the Lord. Welcome to another in the series, Sip and Chat. I'm your host, Leleith Tomlinson, and it is indeed my pleasure to have you joining us. Wow, can you believe it? We are almost at the middle of the year. Indeed, the Lord told us that He would shorten the days for the elect's sake, and it's just moving just like that. Same 24 hours, but yet still it appears to be shorter to us. Well, this afternoon, I want us to interact on a very, very exciting topic that I want to talk about. It's the five senses. And it's interesting to note that a lot of time, we spend a lot of time looking at our different sensory organs, which are notably our eyes, our ears, our mouth, our nose, and all the five of them. And we spend a lot of time looking at our tongue, and we spend for our tasting, and we spend so much time often complaining, wow, my eyes are too big, or my ears are too, eye up, or they don't look this way. And we often do that kind of comparison, hoping and wishing that they were somehow different. So as we're reflecting this afternoon, we just want to take the time out to appreciate our sensory organs, because they are very, very important. And as long as they're functional, and even if they're not optimal in their functioning, we want to appreciate them. So let us look at exactly what are the sensory organs. They are specialized organs that help us to perceive the world around us, and more importantly, for us to interact with the world around us. They form an integral part of our lives. Therefore, without them, we oftentimes have a deficit. And over time, what we have been told is that in the absence of one sensory organ, that the other sensory organ is able to compensate for it. And so we did a little voice box where we went out and we asked a few youngsters what were their views on the sensory organs and what they thought, which one they thought was the most important one. Well, the response was very, very exciting and interesting, and especially because for the most part, it came from kids as they explained to us which organ they thought was important.
Hey, gentle Jesus, meek and mild, look up on your wayward child. From you I don't want to depart. Give me a worshiper's heart. Replenish my soul.
My name is Alana Francis, and the five senses are hearing, seeing, tasting, touching, and feeling. But to be honest, I don't think there's an important one because they all come together to work as a team. But my personality I think that seeing is the most important sense because it gives you the direction. You're opening your eyes to see where you're going, and it gives you directions. Thank you.
The five senses are seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touch. Well, the most important one is hearing, and most people say why not seeing. Hearing is mostly important because if you do not listen, you cannot hear what your parents say, or you cannot be obedient to your parents. And second reason why hearing is important is because if you cannot hear, you cannot listen to the word of God. And plus, if you cannot listen to the word of God, you cannot speak the word of God. So, the most important sense organ is hearing, because if you cannot hear, you cannot listen.
The five senses are seeing, feeling, hearing, taste, and touch. The sense I value the most is touch. The reason why is because you need touch to figure out if something is hot or cold. For example, a child can be close to a campfire and you can feel the heat on his body. But if you did not have touch, the sense of touch, he would not feel the fire or the heat, and then he would get burnt and die. Another example is a child cutting himself. If he If he had the sense of feeling, he would feel pain in the area where it's cut, and he'll know that there's a bruise or a cut on him. If he didn't have touch, he would not know if there's a bruise on him, and he might bleed out or die.
Worshipper's heart, hey, gentle Jesus, meek and mild. Look up on your wayward child. From you I don't want to depart. Give me a worshipper's heart. Replenish my soul.
Well, welcome back. As we got those feedback from those kids, we heard some saying it was the eyes, some saying it was the ears, and we all got, I'm sure we all have our own opinions on the matter. But today, the first one I want to look at is the eyes. A lot has been said about the eyes, and the eyes is what are referred to as the windows to the soul. The sight or ophthalmoception is very, very important for daily living, right? Now, I want us to understand, because we want to look at this from a spiritual perspective as well as from a psychological perspective, the role that the eyes play. Now, what we see with our eyes, we often ingest in our system, often becomes a part of us, right? And one of the things about the sensory organs, they're oftentimes referred to as gateways. So the eyes are a gateway, the ears are a gateway because something is entering into your system. The mouth is also another gateway, and also your nostrils, right? Because as you notice how sensitive our nostrils are, that our nose in particular is that as soon as we smell something, we respond. If it's in contrast to how our body is, we sneeze or so on, or begin to sniffle. So, and our touch, if we touch something and it's very hot, we pull away our hands. So I want us to understand that these are all things that when they act externally, they impact internally how we respond. And in biology, they'll talk about the relay neurons that tells us how we should respond to all of that. So we're getting a little bio, looking at the psychology, and we're going to get into the word of the Lord and what it says about the eyes, how important the eyes are. So a lot of things has been said about the eyes. For example, one famous writer says, and I quote, that the tongue may hide the truth, but the eyes never. In other words, and I thought about it, and as a producer is putting up a plate of food, you can, if you cannot see the food, it might taste good, but your eyes will also give you the interpretation of exactly what it looks like. And so many people, even though sometimes some might eventually taste good, because they eat with their eyes, they will never taste it. So, for example, when I go into the supermarket and I see crab meat, usually this whitish, pinkish meat, because it's not usually the norm for us to eat in that way, I'm not someone who just buy crab meat and cook it, because I literally eat with my eyes. If it doesn't look good, no matter how somebody says it tastes good, I'm not going to eat it, just like crab. To me, it's a crawling creature. So for me to really break up those little tentacles and put them in my mouth, not going to happen. And I'm sure it's the same for many people as well. But, and another writer says, never bend your head. Always hold it high. Look the world straight in the eyes. A lot of us need to understand that as we are progressing through life, our position in terms of our sight, not just physically, but also emotionally, is going to impact our life. It's going to impact the course that we take. For many people, if they see something that looks negative, they automatically says to the other sensory neurons, it's not going to happen. Mentally, they began to say, I'm not going to be able to do it. I can't overcome this mountain. Or if it's a valley, I can't tunnel my way through, because of what they see. And I want us to understand that we have to learn how to train our eyes to see beyond what we see. You remember the story in the Bible about those men who went to look into the promised land. Hear the name of it? The promised land. And when they got to the promised land, the 10 spies, and the 10 represents the number of government as well. And when they went into the land, the Bible tells us that 5 of the spies came back with a favorable report, and the other spies came back with a negative report. 10 men went to look at the same territory, but 5 came back with positive based on their sight, which informed their intellectual capacity. And the other 5 came back based on their own judgment with a negative report. So we see how it is that our eyes play a very important role. Basically, as the story went in the Bible, that the five that were negative, they said to themselves that, wow, we went into the land, but when we got in the land, all that we saw were giants in the land. We will never be able to overcome those giants, but yet still, when the other five men, what they saw fruit trees, they saw things in the land that they could possess. And of course, because it was in the promised land, Joshua was going to lead them over into that promised land. So I think we need to understand that our perception, which is captured by what we see, is very important as we pursue life's goal. We can look at where we are now and we can use it as a platform or a stepping stone to say, well, right now I'm at ground zero, but I'm sure the peak of the Twin Towers is not impossible. Or we could have a mantra that says, you know what? I'm at ground zero. I'm going to live at ground zero and I'm going to die at ground zero because of what you see around you. So I'm also remembering this other song that little kids we used to sing as little kids. It says, watch your eyes, what they see. Because we have to know, based on what we see, how to interpret it and allow it to work for our good. You know, it's so very, very important. As I'm talking about eyes and on how the different sensory organs interact, I also remember that when I was younger, there was a song that I would listen to. And I think the song says, she got Betty Davis eyes, right? And she has some beautiful eyes. And I would always sing that song, dancing and carrying on. And I always say, she got meditations eyes. As I said, I was very young. I don't even, and I sang it and the song was nice. But then as I got older and I was able to read the words of the song, my eyes, I began to recognize that all this time I was singing the wrong thing. So our eyes, when we're able to read and interpret, we get a different perception and our understanding is open up. We become more enlightened to truth. Because all these years I was singing, she got meditations eyes, when the song actually said, she got Betty Davis eyes. So our eyes are so very important. They are the windows to our soul. That is what is captured in the book of Luke as well as in the book of Matthew 6, verse 22. Right? The Bible says to us, as it says here, it says the eyes are the lamp. If your eyes are good, your whole body will be full of light. Matthew 6:22. Here the Lord describes the eyes as a lamp which lights the entire body. Okay? Our eyes are the entrance to our hearts and minds. And as such, and a lot of people don't like to read their Bible, but let me tell you something. As a psychologist, the same exact knowledge that we can deduce when we read the Bible is the same thing that we learn in psychology class. Because here we're saying that the eyes, they are the entrance to our hearts and minds. And that's the same thing that the Bible says, that the eyes are a lamp to the body. So what we see, we internalize. And when we internalize it, it eventually affects our externalities. So that is very, very critical. When the Lord says he referred to good eyes, he meant eyes that will see well. And I'm telling you, we've got to know how to see things and how to interpret them for our good, knowing, as the word of the Lord says, that we walk by faith and not by sight. So faith now is able to further amplify what we see, or when we see negative, because our sights are infused with our faith, then we have a totally different perception of what is happening around us. It's important to understand that bad eyes lead to bad perception. But if our eyes are good, our whole body will be illuminated because it automatically affects our emotion. So the parallel I want to make today is that there is a relationship between what we see and how we feel. And if you think about it, have you ever noticed how when a child, she's inside the house or in the yard and they look and they see daddy's car coming or they see mommy's car coming, and once they will hear it and they will look. They look, and once they see that mom or that dad or whoever the caregiver is how they run towards a person, because they're seeing someone that brings them joy, and they're seeing someone that brings them, this happiness and comfort. And in the same way as well, if they did something wrong now, it would have a different interpretation. But it's important for us to understand that we can move obstacle and locate whatever we are looking for. Ladies and gentlemen, there are some obstacles in our lives, and if we face them and acknowledge them, we're able to move them. What we don't confront, we cannot conquer. That's powerful. What we don't confront, we cannot conquer. And a lot of people are defeated because they are fearful of confronting what is it that has been holding them captive for all these years. But we've said it a lot of times on this program that it is time for us, whoever you are, whether you're a Christian, whether you're just a person listening to this program, that you cannot go to your next level unless you come face to face with what is it that you want to do and your will to rise up from where you are and go forth and conquer. It's very, very important. So you cannot conquer what you don't confront. And in confronting it, you've got to face it head on. I think about, as a lot of times, about the woman with the issue of blood. She had to confront her situation. The men at the gate with leprosy, they had to confront their situation. And part of confronting it was moving towards it, looking where they're going. And what is so powerful is that even with the woman with the issue of blood, she wasn't able to have contact eye to eye with Jesus, but in her spirit, because she knew what Jesus was able to do. She had seen and heard of the miraculous of Jesus. She was able to confront her situation, not as much physically, but emotionally. So when we talk about sight, we're not just talking about physical sight, but emotionally, how we bring ourselves to a place to confront things in our lives. I know that you are enjoying the program right now because I see the comments and I see what's happening, but we've got to understand that nothing changes unless we decide to confront it with our eyes, physically and or emotionally. Our eyes can be used to see that which is good or evil, that which is beneficial or that which is harmful. How we perceive things, it's very, very important. And we talk a lot about the glass being half empty as opposed to the glass being half full. And that is important as we set life's goal, as we seek to go after new pursuits. What are we seeing, right? It's never been achieved. That doesn't mean you cannot go after it. So our perception is going to be important. It's important to understand if we perceive goodness, that will radiate outwards from within our hearts and our minds. But if we allow our eyes to linger on evil, we are so affected by what we see that darkness actually begins to emanate. You remember that man in the Bible, Ahab? He had evil eyes to the point where he saw Naboth's vineyard and he went over to Jezebel. So our eyes can lead us down destruction path because because of how we allow our eyes to see negatively. And remember, the eyes are a window and opening to the soul. So because he saw this man's vineyard, he envied the man's vineyard and he went to Jezebel and he said, he's got to have that vineyard. Can I ask you this question this afternoon? What are your eyes perceiving? Is it yours? Is it something that you should be looking at? We've got to train our eyes to perceive that which is good, that which is honorable, and that which is acceptable in the sight of God. Watch your eyes, what they see. So as we examine the senses, there are so many little special poems that we can reflect on. And this is one of my favorites. It says, 5 little senses are what I need to use when things are near. I use my eyes to see. I use my ears to hear, and I use my nose to smell. I use my hands to touch, and I use my mouth to taste. The things I love to eat so much, 5 little senses standing in a row to see, to smell, to touch, and to taste the things I need to know. So all of these little senses are so important. And we just heard the feedback from the little kids as they spoke to us about, and what I found very interesting is the one that Alana said. Alana said, when you think about it, all of them are very, very important. but she thought the eyes, which is what we looked into today, was one of the most important ones. So it's important for us to appreciate all of these senses. And, one of the things that we also learn as we look at our senses is that in the absence of one sense, that the other sense compensates for the other, right? We think about the man that was by the roadside and how he heard, he couldn't see, but he heard that Jesus was passing. And it was in that hearing, not the seeing, but in his hearing that he was able to cry aloud and ask Jesus to come unto him. So all of the senses, they really, really work together, and they help us to become who we are and make us whole persons. And as we celebrate our senses, as we give the Lord thanks for them, we need to also consider the needs of those who are not able to function at their optimum because their sensory organs are not in order as they ought to be. We cannot, sometimes we label people, we call them the deaf man, we call them the blind man, our dummy. And, it would say it sometimes in a very derogatory way. But in even expressing that, are we grateful for our sensory organs, all right? And we should even, if you want to learn to appreciate the sensory organs, for example, your eyes, just try to enter a room and not have the ability to see where you're going. You begin to fumble, you begin to bump into stuff because there is darkness around you. But once you open up your eyes, everything around you, the very color, the very hue of what is around you begins to appear and feels different. So we have to appreciate that the eyes are so important, because when it is closed, like many persons, they can't pursue their goals because their eyes are closed to options. And that is something that we have to be cognizant of. We have to open, as we open our eyes, we automatically open up our minds to the things that are possible. And possibilities are what we're talking about this season. It's a new age. Somebody say it's the best of times and it's the worst of times. And part of capitalizing on the best of times is what we see. When others people see, even in economics, when we are going through turbulent and challenging times, when many people will see that, boy, we can't, houses are high or people are migrating. What other people see, they see opportunities. And that is why some companies, they are able to make so much money, because they're able, in the times when everybody said nothing is happening, they're able to invest in those seasons because of how they perceive the market, what they interpret of what they see around them. So how we perceive things, I can't overemphasize that, is very, very important. So the next time we look at a situation, please let us know from which angle are we perceiving this activity. Are we seeing it through our negative eyes, or are we seeing it through the positive lenses? And people influence how we interpret what we see. People influence how we interpret what we see. So if we are in the right circles, or we're in the right crowd, or we're with the right people, then automatically our perception of the situation that is happening around us will be different than if we are around people who say, boy, nobody can cross it. Nobody has ever made it over this, right? And if that's all that we are hearing and seeing and nobody getting over, and we allow it to come in our system, then we're not going to be as effective as we ought to. So I really hope this program and the series that we're going to be doing continues to be really, really very enlightening for you, because the opportunities, as I said earlier, they're endless, but our perception continues to mitigate against us a lot of times because of how we see things. And so, as I want to endorse this, that as we look out, we must also keep our heads high. When I say high, not in a lofty manner, but in a manner that says, I'm not going down, but I'm going forward. And I've come to recognize as well that when we hold our heads down, we tend to stumble, and there is uncertainty because we cannot see what lies ahead. But if we hold our heads high and we begin to focus our eyes, especially on our goal, and in particularly as we pursue those goals, we turn our eyes upon Jesus. And especially in the times of troubles and challenges, I have a song that says, turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face, and the things of this world will go strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. So we must be careful. What is it that we are perceiving? If all of our knowledge begins with the senses, proceed with understanding, and ends with reasoning, well, we ask ourselves then, who would we be if we had not even one of these senses? So our senses, they do play a pivotal role. So the next time that you look in the mirror, I want you to say, thank God for my eyes, because they're the windows to my soul. Cause me to look on the things that are positive, the things that are honorable, because I want to pursue my goals and whatever you hear. So as we go through the week, the different weeks, we're going to look at the different ones. Next time, we're going to talk a little bit more about the ears, because the ears also play a very, very important role. And I always share this story about just how to be deaf to the negative around you. Because even if you can't see, how we hear and how we ingest what we hear is going to be very important to our move going forward. So let us just continue to perceive the things that are good, understanding that the windows are the gateway to our future. What are you perceiving today? Maybe there's an obstacle before you, but remember, it cannot be too high for God to take you over it. And it cannot be too low for him to take you under it. And it cannot be too wide for him to take you around it. So never ever lose focus. God specializes, as we've often said, in things that seem impossible. Open your eyes and begin to behold that which lies ahead of you, because God's got you if your eyes are open. Until next time, continue to join us here on Sip and Chat.